welcome to another Collab Masterclass. Today we're taking a bit of a focus on financial services, particularly advisory businesses. And I've got with me David McCleary, who's the CEO of MCP Financial Services. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, David.
Today I really wanted to have a bit of a chat about marketing in financial services businesses, particularly advisory businesses where they might be insurance, it might be mortgage broking, accountancy, and the like. So, without further ado, I guess we'll jump into it. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on, positioning a financial services advisory firm. So the things that you've experienced and any advice that you might have.
Thanks, Dave, for the chance to have a chat today. Look, I think you've really gone to the heartbeat of the challenge for many professional service firms is positioning. A lot of it when starting out, especially with sales and marketing activities, we don't actually think about what sort of business we want to be.
Yeah.
So I've often talked to people about running a professional service business, and if you don't position your business, your clients will do it for you. So what I mean by that is that you need to have a strategy in terms of what tier of market you're going to support, what services you're going to provide to them, how you're going to price those services, and so and aligning yourself to other comparable brands, like what sort of business do you really want to be? So I think it's a really important and often overlooked aspect of running a business is considering, do we want to be a business that's a little bit higher touch or provide a high service level, or do you want to be focused on the quality of the advice and therefore the quality of the people, and that provides a elasticity in terms of the pricing that's going to apply to that. So in our industry of financial services, there's such a deep market. The services, whilst can be quite similar, the customers that you service are really, really broad and diverse. So you can actually build some niches that align best to your positioning.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I think starting with the customer is probably the first point. Is like, who is that customer? As you mentioned, is it a high net worth individual? Is it someone who's more salaried? Identifying that and really building your services around that, immersing yourselves in their lives. What are their interests? What are their desires? And I think that word desire is really important. Like everyone talks about purpose and the why. But I get that people sell mortgages or they facilitate financial planning. But what are the true desires beyond getting the product that your customer actually has? Answering those questions and having your take on it, because there's no right or wrong answer. It's what you think is right, and then sticking to that. And building your services around that, will help set up for success. Scaffold the business from the long term.
It's another really good question because it's something that I've got wrong a lot over the journey and still get it wrong sometimes. I think we, in financial services in particular, we tend to want to solve the problem first, and whether that's product or getting a result quickly. I've sort of learned the hard way sometimes. You've got to invest the time to build an understanding, yes, of what the client wants, sure. That's really fundamental, absolutely. But you've actually got to get an understanding of the customer first. Mm. So I know more recently, especially with our business clients, we're spending more time trying to understand what the business does and what the real drivers are inside the business and how that impacts the business owner. And that makes a really material difference on what their needs really are when you dig a bit deeper. And that obviously then allows you, when you do come into fulfillment mode or facilitating a product or a service outcome for them, that's better matched, not just to what they're telling you, but because you've built that on a foundation of having a much better understanding of what their current objectives and their longer term objectives are. So we're still getting better at that. And sometimes the pressure of time and deadlines means that you try and take shortcuts and you try to get an outcome for a customer earlier or quickly with less paths of resistance, but generally it ends up being detrimental in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I just wanted to kind of pivot a little bit to, I guess, like in your professional services business, you can start to look and sound very similar to other businesses, and I get that. Like the cost of entry for a lot of professional businesses, the service firms is pretty much the same. You need to have high quality people, a professional offer in terms of offices and capabilities and all of those things. But it seems to me that there's a lot of sameness. What's been some of your experiences in kind of using positioning to make yourself distinctive and stand out?
Yeah, I think there's a few elements to that. Is the first acknowledging what you're not particularly good at. So that's scary sometimes because no one wants to say no to revenue. So you get an opportunity, and it's being strong enough, especially when you're starting out early, to go, well, I don't either have an expertise or a deep understanding of that industry or category. I know that I'm going to be, it's going to be inefficient or a bad outcome for the client for me to pursue it. So having the courage to say, look, no, we're not particularly good at that. And we still do that today. And we've got a number of people in our business. But where things arise where I think that we're not going to be able to provide the optimal outcome, it's better to be honest with people. Yeah. I think that's the first part, Dave. And obviously you can lose in the short term, but win in the long term with that. So that's something we've certainly got a lot better at. But I think otherwise, then also getting away, another part of that is getting away from some industry acronyms all the time. So we start to get buried in processes that really the customer isn't too interested in. So we need to be very mindful of issues like compliant and good advice and all, all the things that you talked about earlier. They're really important, but we need to deliver in a way that's meaningful for the customer, because I think we've lost the customer in this whole journey. Now, we've had royal commissions and all sorts of things in financial services, but I'm not sure the customer's been at the forefront of all these outcomes. And so I think we're trying to differentiate ourselves by dealing with customers and things that are important to them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I guess that's a natural segue, to the Royal Commission, which is now close to 2 years since we've had it. And trust was probably one of the big things that came out of it, in terms of the lack of trust that consumers were having with financial services institutions. Tell me, do you see that things have changed, or how? And then the second part to that is, trust is what we're all trying to build with our customers and our clients. What are some of the ways in which financial services businesses can do that in a way that's valuable?
Yeah, well, the first part of that question, I think there was a lot of momentum building in the financial services industry in terms of reforms and changes. And I think the Royal Commission was a culmination of that in some respects. So a lot of the good financial services businesses had already, upgraded and advanced in their processes and how they delivered advice and how they dealt with customers well before the Royal Commission. So that's my first comment. And I think they've designed better processes to accommodate the delivery of advice. My only concern is that, as I said probably before, is that I'm not sure that a lot of those then changes have got the clients interests at heart in terms of delivering value to the customer. So I'm not sure they're seeing tangible benefit from some of the changes. So I think there's a general commentary is that some macro changes to industries, and whether it be, say, the finance industry where you've got caps on interest-only borrowing or something like that. I think some of those macro reforms have been really good and positive, and they're designed to change long-term behaviour, whereas some of the other very granular reform doesn't seem to make a material impact on changing long-term behaviour. So I might be a little bit cynical when it comes to some of that, but with all those challenges in leading into trust, I think for good organisations, because of the complexity and trying to see value for the customer, that's where you can build trust. So I think without compliance and challenges, then it is harder to stand out sometimes. So having these things in place, actually compliance for professional service providers can be your friend in some
Yes.
respects,
Yeah,
because
yeah, that's right.
it's giving you a framework, giving people a frame of comparison between advisors when they look at the quality of how they deliver advice and who they align themselves with. So shining a beacon on that can help you indirectly build trust.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. You know, the fact that you, as an advisor, you know, need to go through so much compliance, certification, study, and so forth, that just needs to come to the fore. You know, that's your ring fence around your advisory business against someone who perhaps doesn't have that. And it's a trust signal for the client to say, okay, well, these guys seem to be at the top of their game, and there's evidence. And I think, you know, with financial services business, it's a very intangible thing that you're buying. You know, yes, you get documents, but they're not really a sexy thing. But what is the tangible outcome that people can grab a hold of? And I think if you can make it tangible, the service offering, you know, whether that's through identifying the stages and gates that they're going to go through and communicating the value at each of those stages, then you start to build trust points. And I don't think a lot of financial services providers have identified that customer journey to identify where the points in that journey where they can really add value, and create trust. Because, you know, trust is not something that you just get because you've got a customer. It's something that you earn, and you earn along the journey. And each point is a risk to lose that trust, and it's also an opportunity to gain that trust. That's great, Dave. I just wanted to talk now about lead generation and referral marketing, because particularly for advisory businesses, whether it's a mortgage business or insurance business, it can be kind of a hunter's game. And I'm interested in your approach to that, and any insights that you've got on generating new customers.
Well, I think that goes back to what you started with about positioning. So, especially when you're looking to develop referral networks, that's where it's really important to understand, you know, what your positioning is. You talked about your point of differences in the marketplace, having an awareness of that. So, I think that's the most important thing to do. That first is understand that, and then you're able to point your distribution activity towards areas that are aligned with your positioning that you set forward. So whether that be pricing or type of industry or whatever the case may be. So I think sometimes that's the challenge. Is often a disconnect between, you know, where you seek your distribution from, whether it be third-party industry groups, accounting firms, whatever the case may be. Often there's a disconnect there. So in terms of what's worked well for us is, everyone would be easy for say that we all want the best clients, the most profitable clients, and all those sorts of things, but the most important thing is qualification. So where you're generating lead referrals is getting an opportunity to get an understanding of the customer's profile, needs, and wants. So by having a really strong, tight referral relationship, you're also getting an insight into the customer in advance that can save time in the experience for the customer. So if you know, for example, of what their preferences might be, now you can still challenge those. That might be in terms of their, an understanding of their risk profile or previous behaviours. Getting that insight from a third-party referral network and then demonstrating to that referral partner, let's say it was an accountant, that you have the experience and you understand those issues, it's going to place you in much better stead when you're all together having a conversation about a financial service matter.
Yeah, you've really got to protect their reputation, but probably more importantly, enhance their reputation. I think, and it probably is a bit of a nice segue into content marketing, which gets bandied around a lot, and I think a lot of people don't quite know how it all kind of connects into what they do on a day-to-day basis. And I think, like the short answer around content marketing is that everything is that you do is content marketing. Whether you're doing something like this, or whether you're producing a blog, or whether you're just simply creating value with the client. But I think it's really important to identify the stages of the funnel, if you like, though content that attracts clients, and that could be attracting new referrers, content that engages people from interested parties to clients, and content that then delights customers and clients to kind of stay within the loop of the organization, so that they don't just disappear off into the ether. Just on that last point, Dave, on client retention, and the fact that particularly in the mortgage business, you might develop a relationship with the client. It might be fantastic. You get them the loan that they want, and then they live in that house for the next 7, 10, how many years. Have you gone about either re-engaging with those types of people, or how do you have a relationship with those people that is, I guess, meaningful, not annoying them?
Yeah, that's again something that we battled with over a journey. I'm not sure we still get it right, but I think it goes back to creating awareness. So if you've got one example is to have really good content that's relevant, and by having a routine and consistent connection, raising awareness, you might be able to talk about a number of financial service issues that may or may not be relevant to them. So if you can segment your customer base, that's optimal. So you communicate in a manner that's relevant. So, we've got customers in regional areas, and the regional clients might be interested in incentives for property in regional areas, whereas the city, they might not be as interested, for example, or different states or different geographies. So if you can segment your message and make it more relevant for your customer base, I think what we try and do is create awareness. And I think also with things like content marketing is it shows your brand's committed to, ongoing being relevant and understanding what trends are developing in its industry. So your customers might not always read your content all the time or read everything you say, but when they need to access something that's relevant to them, I know that a lot of your clients have got really deep reservoirs of blogs in their websites. So there's always a really good pool of relevant articles and content that they can dive into when they need it. Because when you're transacting, and you mentioned things like property, it's not something you do consistently. It might be something you only engage in every 7 years, as you said. So you need to have content. You don't know when they're going to need the content or when they're going to need to hear from you. So I suppose professional service firms have got to show that they're still relevant, that they're staying up to date with what's happening in the industry, and provide information that's relevant as best as possible for their customer base.
So you've used the word relevant there, and it's absolutely key. And so it goes back to your CRM and how well how good your data is. It's my kind of experience that people don't put enough effort into managing the quality of their data, because, as you say, if someone's at 7 years into their property, they may well be ready for at least a review, and they may well be ready to buy again. But the type of information that they're looking for at that particular point is quite different from someone who potentially has just, started a mortgage, there's 1 year into it. So I think, communicating based on relevance or personalization is more than just, dear John and dear Mary. It's really understanding that where are they in the life cycle on your CRM, and putting a bit of effort to make sure your CRM is up to date, because I guess it's a cliche to say that, your data is your gold mine, but if your gold mine is dirty, it could be rocks and not gold.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that when we're all busy and time poor and we've got pressure from deadlines, the one of the first thing that gets put aside is those hygiene matters. Maintaining really good data, because yes, your business can survive from week to week without it, but if you want to build a business that's sustainable and well regarded and communicating relevant content, you've got to understand who your customer base is. So,
Yeah.
And we've had examples where we spend time, if we acquire a business, we want as far as we can. It's difficult to get across all the customers immediately in a lot of detail, but we want to understand, their geography, their occupation, what might be relevant to them as best we can. So you can start to build that segmentation and relevance. And then you need, in our view, people underinvest in CRM and marketing, and don't spend both the time and the money they need to do it professionally.
Yeah.
So we certainly recognise the value, how important it is, and try and instill it across to our team about it's worth investing in it. Take a longer term view, and that'll be more beneficial for your customer in the long term as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think the ultimate benefit of building a strong brand has to be price resilience. When things are great like they are at present, when there's lots of property being sold and it's fantastic, you only have to turn up and you'll probably do all right. But that's not always going to be the case. And those times where life is tough, that's where branding comes to the fore. If you've built a strong brand that people respect and trust, then perhaps, well, certainly you'll be on the consideration list, and secondly, perhaps you won't be check priced and the like. You'll be valued for what you actually deliver.
And that's so, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but you're building a strong, you've got a positioning, and then you're building on that, and you're reinforcing that positioning with your customer base. So then you can, you've got the trust, so things that we've talked about today, then you can spend more time talking about what's important, which is what the customers, their life and what's important to them and what their needs are, rather than establishing, a positioning all the time and spending so much of your time trying to gain trust. And then, so that's been valuable to us, is that sometimes where you've got that trust, people often, you realize they don't want to know about you. They just want to they want to get straight to talking about what they want to do, their goals and dreams and ambitions, rather than spending the bias of the time trying to establish who you are and how you work, and those sort of building that trust, as you say. So that's one thing that we really enjoy. When we've got that trust with the customer, we can roll our sleeves up and get into it.
Yeah, I think it's I'm not sure the statistic, but it's something close to 90% of people have done their research well before they started talking to you. They've visited your website, they've looked at your Google reviews, they've checked out your LinkedIn profile. So like at that point, it's really it's a bit too late if you're having to justify who you are and what you do. Most people will have done that work, and that's really, I think, I just want to conclude really in this area around the role of marketing in financial services advisory businesses, because in other areas, marketing can, marketing traditionally is, product, price, place, and promotion, but the product tends to be wrapped up in financial services product specialists. But I think in advisory firms, I think that's perhaps slightly different, and I think it's really important that either the owner or the brokers themselves take an active role in marketing, and making sure that the assets that they need to sell with, to communicate with, are at the best that they can be, and that their personal branding's connected in with that, because like it's the broker who ultimately the relationship lives with. Do they like that person? Does that person look like they can help me? And yes, they're backed by a reputable business. So I think
I'd have two comments on marketing, and I think people obviously think that marketing's the same as sales. They don't understand the difference between the two, and I'd say a lot of professional service providers, a lot of them are really good at sales, but not good at marketing. So, so they don't really have a consistent, whether it's collateral, the message isn't consistent, and that's something that we have been inconsistent with at times. I think when we're in front of the customer, we get a chance to talk about the story, and it's quite good. But I don't think we're very good at reaching out to a wider, unfiltered audience, communicating exactly what it is that we do. And I think that's a common trend, I think, in a lot of service businesses is marketing, where they should reach out and get some, professional advice on how to do it. And the second comment I'd make on marketing is that when service providers get really busy and they're, always a real danger period, is that's when they stop thinking about marketing, because they're buried in amount of customer work and traffic. And then after 3 or 4 months, they might bob up, and then suddenly their pipeline's a little bit dry. So you always got to be marketing and thinking about what your marketing strategy and your marketing plans, and have a plan at the outset so you don't get thrown off course because suddenly you've got the inevitable distractions that you're going to get in business from time to time.
Yeah, it gives you the boom bust cycle, that kind of behaviour, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Dave, thanks for your time. It's been fantastic talking to you about marketing in financial services businesses. There's lots of little pearls in there, so I hope everyone's enjoyed some of the insights that you've given us today.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you having me on.